been a while. But what you see on the screen is a picture of a book you've seen in a past podcast about the expanded universe. But this episode's about the book because I have read it recently. I'm just going to put this out there. There may be some spoilers, so if you plan on actually reading the book, I don't suggest listening to this podcast. So, Heir to the Empire starts about 5 years after the movie Return of the Jedi. And it documents the beginning of a sweep of an Imperial warlord by the name Grand Admiral Thrawn, whose name from his actual alien species is Mithril Naruto. There's a reason they call him Thrawn, because it's much easier to pronounce for humans. Anyways, this is the beginning of documentation and story, because it's not actually a document, of one of the smartest and most powerful people in Star Wars history. I was trying to think of the right word. Thrawn. For a second here, I'm going to talk about Thrawn. Thrawn is of the alien species Chiss, who is from the same galaxy. He's from the unknown regions. I read the book Outbound Flight, so I know a little bit more. He's from the unknown regions, and he's been exiled by his alien species because he does things in a way that they don't believe. He'll go out and go ahead and attack what he believes may be a threat to his alien species, when their way of doing things is to wait till they're attacked before they're willing to attack back. So he does things very differently. And Admiral Thrawn can see into the insightfulness of any plan, find your weakness within seconds. For example, in the book Outbound Flight, he was able to defeat a whole group of separatist starships with only 6 small ships of his own. Not like full out starships, just 6 small ones. I think that was the amount. Anyways, he is very smart and he can easily defeat any enemy given his resources. And he is not the same Imperial as you would see in many others. Many others go out for their own glory. Many others are there for themselves and don't care. But he looks at the final goal, while others try to achieve the victory that's in front of them, which is something you can find in almost anyone. Many people aren't out there. So Grand Admiral Thrawn is probably one of the greatest villains in Star Wars. He can probably rival those of other characters in other books, like Roger Chillingworth from Scarlet Letter. I'm not going to say he's the greatest in American literature, but in terms of smarts, he is really good. Now, Heir to the Empire, I loved the book when I was reading it. There were points where Timothy Zahn went to detail that was like, he went into detail that made sense, but at the same time, you really got what the scene felt like. There's a scene when Luke Skywalker, I believe it was taken for the first time, well, not first time, for the second time, to talk with Talon Card. When they got to the base when they got to his base, he described it so well, and you could really feel the darkness that was inside that place. Timothy Zahn also brings in elements from the Star Wars universe that you wouldn't think were there, such as the Yelsmari, which are little animals that have adapted to be able to block the Force within a certain radius. In the book, as you would read, you could tell that hardly anyone's ever heard of these things. But it's obviously true because Luke can't use the Force. It kind of teaches Luke more to think on his feet a little bit and not to trust the Force so much. The Force is great for him, but it's not all he has. And Timothy Zahn also introduces characters such as Mara Jade, Captain Pelion, and Talon Card, as I mentioned earlier, that are influential characters in the book and will probably continue on through other books as being either mentioned or as characters. Captain Pelion, I think, is the only one that only stays as a character in Zahn's books, but he's still there, and I think he's still an important character. I think Pelion's an important character because Pelion gives you the insight of what the old Imperial rule was like under the Emperor and Darth Vader, whereas he's also struggling a bit, but at the same time getting it underneath Admiral Thrawn, and he's kind of raised to this important position. There's another book in this character that's also important named Joris Kaboth, but he isn't really a main character. He's just influential in what happens a little bit in the story, so I'm not going to mention him. Back to Pelion. Pelion is, I think, rather important character in the book because he gives you this insight on what's happening and the darkness that's being seen within Thrawn. As in books like Outbound Flight, you may see more of a hero in Thrawn, but in this book, Captain Pelion really sets the feel of a villain in Thrawn. Because so many people were used to Darth Vader and the Emperor when this book came out as being some of the ultimate villains in Star Wars. I think it was important having Captain Pelion in this book to set Grand Admiral Thrawn as the villain he was. Because if you think about it, it's not so easy seeing darkness in yourself. So if during the parts where he was in the Star Wars books, during the parts where it was from the enemy's point of view in the book, if this was from Thrawn's point of view, instead of through Captain Pelion's eyes, more through Thrawn's eyes, Thrawn wouldn't have looked as much of a bad guy. It's harder to make yourself look as a bad guy. So that's part of why Captain Pelion's here. It's also here to see the difference between Grand Admiral Thrawn from past Imperial warlords and admirals and Darth Vader. It's to show the might and smarts within Grand Admiral Thrawn. Why is Grand Admiral Thrawn so scary, you may say? As I mentioned earlier, he can easily read through anything, and he can plan out something so differently than anyone else. The book all builds up to the point of the attack on the Sluice Van shipyards. This is where everything goes down, and the Imperials start striking back at the rebels. he uses some tactics you wouldn't have seen any other Imperial use or think of, because they would have thought it was stupid. He uses mole miners to try and take over rebel ships to use as his own. Luckily, some of the heroes, Han Solo and Luke Skywalker, are able to see through that and get Lando Calrissian to shut them down because they were his. That's different. I'm just showing you that Grand Admiral Thrawn is smart. And he can, every single word someone says, he reads through that and analyzes it. He is such a good analyzer. He is a logical thinker. He doesn't really have much feeling. I think he has some intuition, but he doesn't really have much feeling for others, I would say. But he does what he sees as the best. Instead of killing Captain Pelion when there was a flaw in the crew, he killed the crew member that caused the flaw. Unlike Darth Vader, who, if forgot the admiral's name, but when he jumped too close to Hoth, Darth Vader killed that general. But instead, when they would have jumped too close to Hoth if Grand Admiral Thrawn was in charge, he would have killed the guy in charge of the jump. He wouldn't have killed Captain Pelion. He would have killed the guy who put in the coordinates or didn't stop on time. Now, if it was Captain Pelion's fault for not giving the order on time, sure, Grand Admiral Thrawn may have, but the reason for doing this is so much better because your men with experience aren't going to make as many mistakes, so therefore you're going to have a stronger army. This could come back to bite Grand Admiral Thrawn later, but I doubt it's going to bite him back as much as it would Vader and Palpatine. I think what's more going to bite Grand Admiral Thrawn later in the later two books in the Thrawn trilogy, which I haven't started yet, but I'm about to start Dark Apprentice. Wait, that's not... Anyways, that's from a different trilogy. I think his deal with George C'baoth is going to bite him in the butt, so to say. George C'baoth, I tell you why I thought that, but I'm not going to because I'm not actually talking about Outbound Flight. And George C'baoth is one of the characters in Outbound Flight. Now, this George C'baoth in this book is actually a clone of that George C'baoth, but it's the same man. But all I'm going to say is this book really did deserve to be the book in 91 that restarted the Star Wars Expanded Universe and got more authors writing about Star Wars. Who knows if... I don't know if George Lucas would have still made the movie in 99 if the Expanded Universe didn't get more mention. It could have been that because the books were getting so much attention in the 90s that George Lucas decided, these books are getting so much attention. Might be time for me to do one of the other trilogies I was originally planning. I don't know if that's what, if he was at. This could have been part of the influence in him doing that. Because Heir to the Empire really did deserve that title as a book. Now, I haven't read all the books, so I'm not going to say it's one of the best ones out there, but I think Timothy Zahn did a great job writing it. He added stuff we wouldn't have seen otherwise. And he also gave us an insight into Wookiee culture and beliefs and such when Leia went there. That was nice to see. And also gave us more insight in the smugglers, and also let us know what the New Republic was like in its after the first couple years it was formed. So, there are later books, such as the Jedi Academy trilogy, that has some diplomatics in it, but by then the New Republic is in its not full state, but it's pretty much set up. And the Imperials aren't really being worried about too much, except for the stray warlord every now and then. But Grand Admiral Thrawn did something else by getting all the Imperials together under one man again. Because apparently before Grand Admiral Thrawn was the last of the Grand Admirals, because apparently they had killed all the others in the New Republic. The Grand Admirals were at the top. They were the ones with the best strategies and such. So by this point, Grand Admiral Thrawn is the last of the Grand Admirals, because all the others have been killed by the New Republic. So, if you think about that, how the Grand Admirals were probably the strongest, if all the Grand Moffs and Grand Admirals, all those with the highest titles, are dead, Grand Admiral Thrawn is probably one of the last hopes for the Imperials at this point. So that gives more intensity in what's going on when we find out that during the book. I think this book is great because of the interweavings that eventually occur during the book and the introduction of new characters to the Star Wars universe. I don't remember everything, so I can't go in much more detail. But the guy in the corner here, right under Luke Skywalker, that's not a stormtrooper. That's Grand Admiral Thrawn, Princess Leia, Luke, Han Solo, Chewie, stormtroopers. I have no idea who that guy is. For all I know, that's George Kaboth. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Star Wars Podcast, episode 8. Hopefully I'll make another one soon. Thanks for watching.